Level 4 of financial freedom. I call it push the tempo. Push the tempo, push the tempo, push the tempo up, push the tempo. I don't know if y'all know that song. I think it's called Push the Tempo. Let me talk about what this means. Level 4. So level 3, I call it sharpen the axe. It's all about investment. And in level 3, we introduced really the 3 resources that you have to work with as it relates to ascending the pyramid of financial freedom. And those are time, relationships, and money. And in Sharpen the Axe, level 3, you're just investing in those things, kind of agnostic to ROI, but a little bit strategic. You know, we talked about here are some good ways to lean into it. Here's some ways to maybe fade out. But you're just investing. You're just investing. In level 4, push the tempo. It's really about leverage. It's really about risk. And risk is scaled to each and every person. I'm not talking about YOLOing into lottery ticket, crazy Dogecoin to the moon leverage, okay? But scaled to you, what are the ways that you can identify some things that have worked, some things you've learned, maybe some passions you've developed that you want to start giving more time to than you were before? Maybe some key relationships you've made that you want to see, you know, what could those turn into? Maybe some money you've made in this or that area, and you want to say, hey, what would it look like to scale that opportunity? It's risk taking in the smallest or the biggest ways, but probably don't start with the biggest ways. But level 4, that's what it's about. Ultimately, if you only casually lived your life, you never narrowed your focus, you never took into consideration like scale, you never stomachs like risk analysis, you never prioritized some things over other things, you would be stuck at level 3. And that would be a good level, you know? It'd be a good level to just continue to invest and almost be carefree as to the results. But I think you'd be selling yourself short in terms of where you could get to. And so level 4 is it's risk analysis. It's how do I determine from all these different things I've been investing in, the ways that I've been investing in time and relationships and money, you know, what's 1 or 2 or 3 that I can really start to put some more resources behind it and some more time or some more relationships or some more money. And those 3 resources are not like totally separate. It's kind of like a Trinity Venn diagram. Like there's 3 circles, and there's some ways that you can utilize all 3 resources simultaneously, or sometimes it's just 2 of the 3, and sometimes it's independent. Okay, so you don't have to get too caught up in like, wait, am I leveraging time or relationships right now? Because I'm meeting up with someone. That took time, but it's a person. You know, most things require multiple, but the point is they're not intrinsically the same thing, time and relationships. So there are ways that they can operate independently as well. So with leverage, it's really like what makes you feel a little bit of risk. And your risk tolerance is going to grow over time or shrink based on the feedback you get from your own risk taking. So as I think about like some of the earliest times where I can remember like, oh, this felt like a risk. I remember in 5th grade, and this didn't last very long at all. Okay, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a business, and during recess, I'm going to sell pictures at a picnic table. Instead of playing with all the friends, I'm going to sit at a picnic table. I'm going to sell pictures. Maybe some kids will buy some. Maybe some teachers will buy some. But here's the thing. I'm not artistic. If I make the picture, I'll never sell a single one. So let me get the creative kids in the class to draw stuff, and I'll sell it for you. And when your stuff sells, I'll give you a commission. Literally, this is me in 5th grade. And this is pre-YouTube, okay, guys? There was no entrepreneur person saying this is how you start a business And ultimately I flamed out. Like, I made a couple dollars, and it was like, I'd rather go play than just make literally a couple dollars. I also lied to all my contract artists. So, there were some ethical dilemmas back then. The point is, I felt the risk of I'm giving up recess. Like, I felt the cost of that, the pain of that. I also felt the risk of, like, I'm posting up on this picnic table offering something for sale. For whatever reason, that feels risky. Like, it feels maybe embarrassing about, like, what if I don't sell a single thing, and other kids in the class are gonna be like, what are you doing? I also felt the risk of the creatives that were making stuff for me to sell. Like, what if their stuff doesn't sell, or what if they don't want to do it anymore, and now I run out of pictures? And so I had to, like, put myself out there in a way that felt risky. That's kind of a little bit of a funny example, but you can keep scaling up into different decisions. And again, in financial coaching, we're going to break down, school.com/financial coaching. We're going to break down, like, how do you optimize level 4? All the different tips and tricks and ways to leverage and ways to calculate risk and make sure you're leaning into things you've invested in that are starting to show fruit, without going crazy, without going beyond what your actual risk tolerance is. And trust me, I've gone beyond my risk tolerance, and I know what that feels like as well. Another simple way I've leveraged time is I've hired people to mow my lawn for most of my adult life. I did actually mow a lawn for the first time in my life about a year ago, and it was kind of fun. But I couldn't, like, I'm not going to spend this 30 to 45 to 60 minutes mowing a yard when I could be developing a skill, when I could be building a business, when I could be researching a company. Like, there just has to be a better ROI use for my minutes. But you might feel the cost of, well, man, financially, however many $50, $60 out the door every time. And what if I don't actually make $50 with this hour? Like, maybe I can afford the $50. So there's not necessarily a big financial risk, but you might feel the time risk of, like, but should I have just done that myself? Because will my time actually be worth more than that time? You know what I mean? And you might feel that risk. Relationally, in college, I remember I spent just so much time meeting up with people. Like, let's get lunch, let's get coffee, let's go play disc golf, let's whatever. And I just want to hear about your life and what's going on, and how can I support you? How can I encourage you? Man, I'm excited to know you. And I just went big on leveraging relationships, because I was just fascinated with people, and it wasn't necessarily so strategic on my part. But I felt the risk in some different ways. Because one, if you put yourself out there, you ask someone to meet up, like, they could say no, right? Or they could think you're weird or not like you. There's some simple relational risk, elementary school level. Will they like me? But there's also, in college, like, this is time I could be studying. Like, I spent considerably less time studying and doing homework than most, really, any of my peers in college and within, like, the business school. And that cost me some things. Like, I'm not going to go to any of the tutoring sessions. I'm not going to go to office hours. I'm not going to be invited to group study things. I'm not going to be in on, like, the elite group that identifies each other when it comes to, like, group project time. Like, I'm just going to be the mercenary that joins whoever's left, and I'm not going to necessarily be in on some circles, and it might cost me some grades. Like, and that was, again, a conscious decision. Like, okay, if I forego the relationships, but I get a 4.0, what does that look like for me? If I get a 3.25, but I invest these 15, 20, 30 hours a week in relationships, what does that look like for me? And I didn't know exactly. Again, you never know what the future is, but I felt like I was onto something with relationships, and I had cultivated a passion for these relationships, and so, like, I leaned into it in level 4. I leveraged into it. I took a risk prioritizing it even above other things that maybe some people would have, like other people might have prioritized. Financially, leverage is simple. It could be just paying for services that save you time, but it's a time and a money risk, a time and a money leverage. Could be starting a business that requires startup capital, or has an opportunity cost of, okay, if I'm going to start this business, maybe it doesn't cost any money to start the business, but it does cost you time, and that costs you money, because you could have spent the time you were going to do your business thing, you could have been driving, food delivery. And so are you really going to go do this thing that doesn't make money when you could have just DoorDashed? And so there's a financial risk there too. And how much time can you really afford to not be making as much income as you could possibly be making? And then just within capital markets, it could be a concentration within your investment portfolio. Like, man, I used to invest in 1,000 companies, and now I'm going to try to narrow it down to 500, or I'm going to narrow it down to 200 or 100 or 20. Okay, so there's a risk taking there related to being more targeted with investments. There can be a risk taking with taking on debt to invest. Like, okay, I'm going to pay X% on this debt, so I'm betting on myself that I'm going to make more than that percent as an ROI on my investments. There's all other ways to leverage money as well. And another key point to emphasize, because I think you get the idea, is like you're just trying to maximize the quantity and the quality of time, relationships, money within level 4. That's really what you're trying to do. And the thing I wanted to add on to that is, it's not just your time, your relationships, your money, but part of the nature of level 4, part of the risk taking and the leverage is, how do I open doors to other people's time, other people's money, other people's relationships? And that could be as simple as, a relational risk could be sending out an email where there's an ask, and you're going to send it to this person, and, oh man, am I going to press send? Am I going to do it? And like, when you start to feel that, like, woo, that's level 4. That is level 4. And there are a lot of ways you can feel that. With time, it could be hiring an employee or hiring a contract worker. I could do it myself, but man, I'm going to bring this person on, and whew, okay, now there's 2 of me. There's me, and then there's this clone minion me that's trying to learn how to do things like I want them to, or I'm going to do this task way better than I can. And so now that puts the pressure on, again, am I maximizing my time if I'm going to be paying for other people's time, and there's only so many hours in the day and only so many people willing to work and whatever. And so it's coordinating resources. It's this calculated risk, and it's one step at a time. But in level 4, you're leaning into it, you're exploring it, you're trying to figure out what's the right next step for me within relationships. In relationships, another risk could be spreading out and trying to meet more people and know more people better. It could also be narrowing in, and like, I'm going to try to get from a good acquaintance to, like, I'm in the inner circle with these 3 people. And that is another way to lean in, to take a risk. What if those people don't pan out? What if they reject you? Of course, but also what if they don't succeed in the way you thought they would, or they're not as valuable to you as you thought they would be? Again, this is like a little bit of a different mindset than just like living life and being friends with people. I'm not trying to say that, like, if the relationship doesn't benefit you, you should cut them out of your life. Like, I'm not giving you family and friendship advice right now. I'm giving you financial freedom advice. Sometimes there's some overlap, a lot of times there's not. So don't cut your mom out of your life, okay? That's not what this video is about. Don't only make a friend with someone if they're going to financially benefit you, because that will ruin your quality of life and your friendships, okay? I'm talking about financially benefiting yourself. And I'm not talking about making friends, all right? Sometimes there's overlap, a lot of times there's not. All right, moving forward. There's a lot of ways to lever, a lot of ways to take risk. You do it one step at a time. You learn how to calculate those risks. You learn how to calculate the ROI on those risks. A lot of times, if you skip that step, you end up tripling down on something because you think it's doing great because it's making revenue, but you're not actually crunching the numbers well enough to realize that it's not making as much revenue as it should. And actually, even though this risk was fine, it was still suboptimal, and you'd be better off reallocating and leaning into a different area. And so you're narrowing in focus rather than trying to do everything ambiguously. So, and it's your resources and it's other people's resources. There's lots of steps on how do you tap into other people's resources, but we'll wrap up this video here. I think you get the idea. Level 4, push the tempo. Push the tempo. Push the tempo. Okay. All right. Talk to y'all soon.